There comes a moment in every life where we wake up and ask, when did I stop living for me? You've spent years worrying what others think. You've shaped yourself to fit into spaces that never honored your truth. And now you're tired. Tired of shrinking. Tired of chasing validation. Tired of caring too much. Today is the moment everything changes. This is not just a motivational speech. It's a call to reclaim the life that's always belonged to you. If you've ever felt trapped by fear, guilt, or the need to please, then this message is yours. Stop caring. Start living. Let's begin. We spend so much of our lives chasing a version of ourselves that other people will approve of. It starts subtly. Maybe you tone down your voice because someone once told you you were too loud. Or you laugh a little quieter because someone rolled their eyes when you were too expressive. You edit your opinions. You second-guess your instincts. You smile when you're exhausted, nod when you disagree, and stay quiet to avoid making it awkward. And over time, without even realizing it, you've built an identity based not on who you are, but on who you think others need you to be. And that is the most dangerous thing we can ever lose. Not love, not success, not approval, but ourselves. When you live for approval, you're constantly watching. Watching for signs that you're accepted. Reading people's faces like a book you never stop studying. Did they like that? Should I have said that? Was that too much? You walk into a room and instantly try to fit into it, instead of asking yourself whether that room even deserves you. The trap is, it works. For a while. You do get the approval. You become the easy one, the one who never causes friction. People like you. But deep down, you're not okay. You're slowly suffocating under the weight of inauthenticity. You're exhausted from performing. You're disconnected from your truth. And worse, you start to believe that your true self is too risky to show. That if you were honest, bold, messy, or raw, they'd leave. That somehow love is a reward you get for being less. But what if the real prison isn't being rejected? What if the real prison is never letting people truly see you? The moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you begin to breathe again. Suddenly, the voice in your head gets quieter. You stop calculating your every move. You start speaking from your heart. You realize, not everyone has to like me. And that's not just okay, it's necessary. The truth is, the people who love the real you won't need you to shrink. They'll make space for your truth, not punish you for it. But you can't find those people while you're busy performing for the wrong ones. So ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you being someone you're not? Just to be accepted? What would happen if you stopped caring how you were perceived and started caring more about how you feel? What would it look like to prioritize your peace over their approval? There's something terrifying and beautiful about stepping into your full self. It's raw. It's vulnerable. But it's also magnetic. Because people can feel when you're not performing. They can feel when you're aligned. That's when the right people start to appear. Not because you changed, but because you finally stopped changing to be chosen. So many of us were raised to think that being good means keeping the peace, being agreeable, doing what's expected. And in relationships, romantic, familial, professional, we often carry that into adulthood. We become the person who sacrifices, compromises, and accommodates to a fault. We say yes to things that drain us. We agree to favors we don't have the capacity for. We listen when we're the ones who need to be heard. And we do it not out of strength, but out of fear. Fear of being labeled difficult. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of being abandoned if we take up too much space. But here's the truth. People-pleasing is not kindness. It's self-erasure. It's a survival strategy built on the belief that my needs are less important than yours. And the longer we live in that story, the more invisible we become, to others and tragically to ourselves. There is a quiet kind of burnout that comes from always trying to be everything to everyone. It doesn't happen all at once, it creeps in. One day you realize you're resentful, bitter, tired. You look in the mirror and don't even recognize the woman staring back. She's doing everything right, but feeling everything wrong. She's giving so much and yet feels unseen. Unmet. Unheld. That's not love. That's not connection. That's emotional overfunctioning. And it's not sustainable. At some point, you have to reclaim the parts of you you've been editing. The fire, the no, the boundaries, the desires. Because you matter. Not just what you do for others, not just what you bring to the table, but you as you are without needing to prove or please. Some people will be uncomfortable when you stop people pleasing. That's okay. Let them be. Because their comfort is not more important than your healing. The right people won't need you to betray yourself in order to stay. And when you stop performing for connection, you start creating space for something far more powerful. Real intimacy. The kind that only exists when you show up honestly. When you stop abandoning yourself just to be accepted. When you speak your needs without apologizing. This isn't about becoming selfish. It's about finally including yourself in the equation. And that shift, that's when life starts to feel like yours again. We are so good at disguising our fear. We dress it up in logic, in maturity, in responsibility. We stay in situations that deplete us because leaving would feel too disruptive, too impulsive, too selfish. We call it being a good person, being reliable, being strong. But if we're honest, deeply honest, we're not staying because it's right. We're staying because we're afraid. Afraid of what people will think if we choose ourselves. Afraid of the fallout. Afraid of the silence that comes when we stop being the fixer, the rescuer, the peacekeeper. So we wrap ourselves in a blanket of responsibility, and we tell ourselves this is what being an adult looks like, putting everyone else's needs above our own. But beneath that narrative is a quiet truth. This isn't selflessness. This is fear. Fear of change. Fear of judgment. Fear of being misunderstood. How many times have you said, I can't just walk away. I made a commitment. How many times have you convinced yourself that it's noble to endure? That love means holding on even when everything in your body is screaming to let go? That staying in the discomfort somehow makes you strong? There's a difference between loyalty and self-abandonment. There's a difference between keeping your word and sacrificing your well-being. But when fear wears the mask of responsibility, we start confusing pain with purpose. We tell ourselves this struggle means something, when all it really means is we're afraid of what happens when we finally say, enough. The people who truly love you won't collapse when you create boundaries. The right job won't disintegrate just because you stopped overextending. The right relationship won't punish you for evolving. If the only thing holding something together is your constant self-sacrifice, then it was never healthy to begin with. And yet we hesitate. We hold back. We stay. Not because it's working, but because we fear the unknown. We fear being seen as the one who quit, the one who gave up. But choosing yourself isn't quitting, it's coming home. Coming home to your needs, to your values, to your truth. We need to stop glorifying suffering as strength. The strongest thing you can do is make a decision rooted in self-respect. Even if it's inconvenient. Even if it shakes things up. Even if it scares you. Fear, when left unexamined, becomes a lifestyle. And that's how we wake up one day in a life that doesn't even feel like ours, just one we've been managing. You weren't born to manage life. You were born to live it. Fully. Boldly. Without the constant need to justify every decision that puts your happiness first. And the exhaustion doesn't just come from the fear. It comes from what that fear makes us do. It makes us give too much. Care too much. Stay too long. Hope too hard. And when that's your baseline, burnout isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. There is a silent kind of burnout that no one talks about. The kind that doesn't come from long work hours or physical fatigue, but from emotional overinvestment. From being the one who always tries harder. From carrying a relationship on your back. From checking in, giving second chances, explaining, fixing, over-explaining again and again. And what makes this burnout so painful is that it often comes from love. You want to care. You want to give. You want to be there. But slowly, you start to lose yourself in the process. You become the therapist, the cheerleader, the emotional anchor. And somewhere along the way, your own needs get buried under the weight of someone else's chaos. And it's hard to see it clearly while you're in it. Because love tells you to try again. Empathy tells you to understand. Hope tells you not to give up yet. But what are you giving up instead? Your peace? Your mental health? Your sense of self? Because no love is worth losing yourself. You start to realize that you're always the one making the effort. Always the one reaching out. Always the one adjusting, forgiving, explaining, waiting. And you tell yourself this is what it means to love someone. But love shouldn't feel like a one-person job. You're not supposed to be the glue holding everything together. You're supposed to build together, grow together, heal together. It's time to start recognizing when your effort is no longer inspiring connection, but enabling dysfunction. When your consistency is no longer building trust, but allowing emotional laziness. When your deep love isn't being cherished, but quietly taken for granted. You have to ask yourself, would I keep showing up like this if I knew they never would? And if the answer is no, then that's your signal. Not to stop loving, but to start redirecting that love toward yourself, toward people and spaces where it's mutual, where it's returned with the same energy, where you don't have to earn it by sacrificing your sanity. Emotional overinvestment is a pattern we learn early, especially if we grew up believing we had to prove our worth. We internalize the idea that love is something we earn through effort, that if we just try a little harder, they'll see us, that if we fix enough, support enough, be enough, we'll finally be chosen. But love that has to be chased isn't love, it's emotional debt. And it never pays back what it takes. You are allowed to stop trying. You are allowed to choose peace over potential. You are allowed to say, I've done enough. And mean it. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to let go. Not because you didn't care, but because you finally did. At some point in your life, someone decided that your fire was too much for them. And instead of admitting they couldn't handle your intensity, your depth, your truth, they told you to dial it down. They labeled it, called you dramatic, needy, too emotional, too loud, too sensitive, too much. And in that moment, a seed of self-doubt was planted. You started wondering, is something wrong with me? So you began editing yourself. Not because you wanted to, but because you thought you had to. You turned the volume down on your personality. You became easier to be around. You started smiling when something hurt, staying quiet when something felt wrong. You learned to adapt, to please, to shrink. But here's the thing no one told you. You weren't too much. They were simply too limited. People often call others too much when they don't want to meet them at the level of depth or honesty required. When someone calls your needs too big, it's usually because they're unwilling or incapable of meeting them. But instead of admitting that, they flip the script. They make you feel like the problem. And that narrative? It sticks. Especially when it comes from someone you cared about. You start walking on emotional eggshells. You double-check your messages before sending them. You wait hours to reply so you don't seem too eager. You hide the depth of your affection, your fears, your desires, because you're afraid they'll run if they see the real you. But how long can you keep hiding? How long can you deny your own truth just to be digestible to someone else? You don't need to apologize for wanting depth. You don't need to shrink your love to make someone feel more comfortable in their own emotional shallowness. You don't need to filter your truth because someone else lacks the emotional capacity to hold it. Being too much is often just being real in a world that's addicted to emotional convenience. And the right people? They won't ask you to turn it down. They'll meet you in that depth. They'll be drawn to your fire, not burned by it. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be understood by the right ones. But they can't find you if you're still wearing a version of yourself that someone else convinced you was more acceptable. Reclaim your too muchness. Reclaim the tears you held back, the words you swallowed, the passions you buried. There's power in being honest about who you are, especially in a world that keeps telling women to play small. The real risk isn't being too much, it's spending your whole life being less. And if someone walks away when you finally show them your full self, let them. Let them leave. Their absence creates space for something far more valuable, alignment. With people who celebrate your strength, not shrink from it. With connections where your vulnerability is not just tolerated, but cherished. That's the freedom you deserve. And the more you step into that unapologetic version of yourself, the more you'll find you don't need to chase validation anymore. You won't need to convince anyone of your worth, because you'll be living from a place that knows it. But the journey doesn't end with reclaiming your voice. It continues with protecting it. And that's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are not walls. They are not punishment. They are not ultimatums. They are instructions. A language of self-worth that says, this is what I allow in my life. This is how I expect to be treated. But if you've spent most of your life prioritizing others, setting a boundary can feel wrong. It feels harsh, cold, unloving, especially when you're used to being the caretaker, the peacemaker, the one who keeps the emotional ecosystem balanced. You worry that saying no will make you look selfish, that distancing yourself will be misread as cruelty, that speaking up will cost you the relationship. But you know what costs more? Betraying yourself. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you reinforce. And every time you let something slide, every time you minimize your pain, ignore your intuition, or downplay your needs, you are unintentionally telling others, this is okay. But it's not okay. It was never okay. And it's time to stop accepting the bare minimum from people who should be giving you their best. Setting a boundary doesn't make you difficult. It makes you clear. And clarity is a gift. Not just to you, but to the people in your life. It tells them where you end and where they begin. It teaches them how to love you well. And if they can't meet that, it doesn't mean you lower the bar. It means you adjust their access. The fear of losing people is real. But what's worse than losing someone who didn't respect your boundaries is losing yourself while trying to keep them. The more you honor your own limits, the more you build a life that's rooted in mutual respect, not obligation. You stop pouring endlessly into one-sided connections. You stop rescuing people from the consequences of their own behavior. You stop being the emotional sponge that soaks up everyone else's mess. You deserve relationships where your boundaries are seen as a strength, not a threat. Where someone hears your no and doesn't try to manipulate it into a yes. Where your emotional needs aren't labeled inconvenient, but simply human. The most powerful shift happens when you stop trying to be everything for everyone and start becoming everything for yourself. That's where your peace lives. That's where your confidence lives. That's where your life begins to reflect the love you've always given, this time turned inward. One of the biggest traps we fall into is believing that we need certainty before we can move forward. We wait. We overthink. We try to predict every outcome, calculate every risk, gather every piece of information, consult every voice around us, because we want the guarantee. We want to know, if I take this step, will it work out? If I walk away, will I regret it? If I choose myself, will I be alone forever? But life doesn't offer that kind of certainty. And that's what makes it so terrifying and so beautiful. The people who seem the most fearless are not the ones who had all the answers. They're the ones who stopped needing them. They're the ones who took the risk, not because they knew they'd land safely, but because they were willing to jump anyway. We become paralyzed when we attach our peace to the outcome. When we decide, I'll only feel okay if it turns out the way I want it to. And so we hold our breath. We stay stuck. We delay the conversation, the decision, the next chapter, just in case it doesn't go perfectly. But what if you gave yourself permission to move forward even without the guarantee? Think about how many things you've stayed in, not because they were right, but because they were familiar. That job that drains you. That relationship that confuses you more than it comforts you. That version of yourself that plays small. You stayed because you didn't want to risk the unknown. And that fear makes sense. It's deeply human. But here's the truth you've probably sensed deep down. Familiar doesn't mean safe. It just means known. And sometimes the known is slowly killing your joy, your spirit, your freedom. Letting go of control doesn't mean being reckless. It means trusting yourself enough to adapt. To know that whatever happens, you'll figure it out. You'll rise. You'll grow. That even if the outcome isn't what you expected, the person you'll become in the process is worth it. You don't need a 5-year plan to leave what's hurting you. You don't need to see the entire staircase to take the first step. You just need to decide that your peace, your growth, your life matter more than your fear. It's so easy to get addicted to what's comfortable. But the life you truly want, the version of you that's bold, lit up, at peace, alive, it exists on the other side of action. And sometimes the only thing standing in your way is the story you keep telling yourself about what might go wrong. What if instead of asking, "What if I fail?" you asked, "What if I fly?" What if the next step isn't about certainty, but about faith in yourself? Because fearless living isn't about not being afraid. It's about being willing to feel the fear and move anyway. And the truth is, it's not a one-time decision. It's not a motivational high that lasts forever. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment commitment to yourself. Every single day, you are faced with choices. Will I stay quiet or speak my truth? Will I play it safe or take the risk? Will I betray myself or choose alignment? It's in those small moments that you shape your life. Not in the grand declarations, but in the quiet decisions that no one else sees. There's no magical moment where you become fearless once and for all. There is only today. And today, you get to decide who you want to be. You wake up and you choose to say no, even if it's uncomfortable. You choose to stop texting first, even though it scares you. You choose to walk away, even if part of you still hopes they'll change. You choose to raise your standards, even when you're not sure what's waiting on the other side. And maybe you still care. Maybe you still feel the ache. That's okay. Living fearlessly doesn't mean being numb. It means not letting your emotions dictate your boundaries. It means honoring what you feel and what you deserve. You start to realize the fear doesn't go away, but you get stronger. You get clearer. You start trusting your gut more than other people's opinions. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your decisions. You stop needing proof before you act. Because your inner knowing becomes louder than your doubt. And here's the shift that will change everything. You stop asking, "Will they choose me?" And start asking, "Am I choosing myself today?" Because choosing yourself is the most radical thing you can do. It tells the universe, the people around you, and most importantly, you, that you are done settling. That you are no longer available for half-effort love, unclear intentions, or situations that cost you your peace. You stop performing. You stop over-explaining. You stop managing other people's feelings at the expense of your own. And something wild happens. You start to feel light again. Not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer negotiating your value every day. You stop chasing what drains you. You stop apologizing for what you need. You stop waiting for the stars to align to take that first step. Because the only thing you ever needed was already within you. The courage to take the next step, even if your voice shakes. That is what fearless living looks like. Not perfection. Not certainty. Just you making the brave choice again and again to stop betraying yourself. Because at the end of the day, the real fear isn't making the wrong move. It's waking up in 10 years realizing you never made a move at all. Now it's your turn. What is one thing you've been holding back out of fear of judgment? What would change if, just for today, you lived like you had nothing to prove? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. Let's create a space where being bold, honest, and fully yourself is the new normal. Backhand index pointing down like this video if it spoke to you. Repeat button share it with someone who needs a reminder to stop caring and start living. White heavy checkmark subscribe for more heart-to-heart guidance on how to grow, heal, and become who you were always meant to be. And hey, what do you want us to talk about next? Leave your suggestions below. Your voice matters here. You are not here to survive. You are here to live. Start today.